Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Thank you for joining me today for an honest book review from a fellow mom seeking great books for children to read. Today's book review is Silver on the Tree by Suzanne Cooper. So if you have stayed with me for a while, you know that I have been doing a review of The Dark is Rising sequence by Suzanne Cooper, and today is the final book, Silver on the Tree. And all the major characters from all the other books all come together in this final installment. The story opens with Will enjoying an afternoon with two of his brothers, and while out, they notice a mysterious animal. And then Will also has visions of things that had happened previously in this location. In all honesty, this opening sequence of the book is a little awkward, and I think readers would find it very difficult to follow along with what's going on. Stephen does take care of a local bully, and so there is this evidence and proof that their family is good and that they seek to protect those who cannot defend themselves, and so protecting the weak. But other than that, the full purpose of the scene doesn't really align with the rest of the story that follows. The story itself is split into different parts with different things taking place. So that was all kind of part of part one. In part two, Will, Bran, Jane, Simon, and Barney, they all come together with the realization that they are part of the Six, along with Merriman, who's the final member, that are going to defeat the dark. So if you've been following along, there was sort of this prophecy or this idea that this would take a group of six, and so those are the Six. The quest in this particular book is to find the sword. On an excursion through Wales, Jane is the one who discovers the location of the sword from the lady who appears to her alone. There is also a beast in the lake that Bran commands to return to the dark, and he claims that he has the authority to do so from his father, King Arthur, who was the original one to send this creature away. But now that the dark is rising, this creature has returned, and Bran commands him to disappear. In part three, Bran and Will sort of disappear from everyone else. They travel to the Lost Land and they recover the sword from the King of the Lost Land. In part four, we have the final battle between the light versus the dark. And these two sections of the book are the most engaging for readers. Everything else was a little bit laborious and not quite as exciting, so kind of keep that in mind. I'll be honest, my son didn't end up finishing reading the book. I think he listened to the audio to sort of finish it out just because, he was in it 4 books. He wanted to finish the last. But getting to part 3 and 4 of the last book is a bit of a challenge, to be honest. But if they can make it that far, I think they'll enjoy the ending. The only real surprise of turn of events in this book is that the readers do learn that John Rowland's wife, the one who was so caring and so gentle with all of them, is actually working with the dark. And so it comes as quite a shock to the characters and to John. And that sort of plays a part in helping the light win, because John is the one who has to give a determining verdict regarding Bran and his placement in time. So if you may remember that Bran is the son of King Arthur, but he was brought forward in time to be raised to protect him from harm. John is also given a choice at the end of the book whether or not he wants to remember his wife for all that she's done, because she is dead. And so there's a question about whether or not he really wants that memory of the evil that was in her. John really struggles and he cannot decide. The lady ultimately removes the memory from him and the battle of light and dark. And so he'll just simply mourn his wife as the one that he loved and the fact that she died, but he won't retain the knowledge of that she was working with the dark. In the end, Will stay in the time that he was born into, but Merriman will be no more. Jane, Simon, and Barney are sort of devastated by this. They have loved him. He's been their great uncle. According to Merriman, now that the battle between the light and dark is done, the only thing left is for what man chooses to do. So we have this great quote towards the end of the book. It says, "We have delivered you from evil, but the evil that is inside men is at the last a matter for men to control. The responsibility and the hope and the promise are in your hands and the hands of the children of all men of this earth. The future cannot blame the present, just as the present cannot blame the past. The hope is always here, always alive, but only your fierce caring can fan it into a fire to warm the world." And so the memory of all that's happened will only be in their dreams. They won't sort of have this idea that it was a reality that they lived through as far as the children are concerned. Essentially, The book ends with them sort of walking back to the farm that they were originally there visiting. Overall, the book I think was pretty good. There are a few instances of Hell and Dan, but other than that, you're not going to find anything inappropriate or unsavory in any of these. You have the lore of King Arthur, the battle between light and dark. I will say the book doesn't really give context for either of those, like where the light is coming from or where the dark is coming from. So there's a lot of inferencing on the part of the reader, and that could be positive and negative depending on your view. There is also this high magic in the book, which is sort of outside light and dark. And so that doesn't really align with any idea of God or a mighty force. It's not there. It does come across more along the lines of nature or creation, but there's definitely not a strong connection to a biblical worldview or trying to make some of those connections between light and dark, because there's something outside of those forces that kind of keeps everything in balance. There are touch points, like I said, that you could try and connect and have a discussion with your reader. But ultimately, if you're looking for a fantasy novel that's also adventurous and that's clean, you don't have to worry about anything inappropriate in it, then this is definitely a series that you may want to check out.